I died. It may sound like an exaggeration, but that is exactly what happened to me. For nearly 10 minutes, my heart simply stopped beating. The doctors called it a rare event, an inexplicable situation, but I know exactly what happened. I know because I was taken to another place beyond what human eyes can see. What I experienced in that short span of time completely changed my perception of life, death, and what awaits us at the end of the journey. Some people do not believe in accounts like this. Others prefer to ignore it, thinking that it is all just a delirium of the mind. But I ask you, before drawing any conclusion, listen carefully. You may not believe me now, but when your time comes, everything I say here will make sense. It was an ordinary day. Nothing indicated that something so extraordinary was about to happen. I woke up early, had my breakfast, and got ready for my swimming practice. Since I was a child, I had always loved swimming. The pool was my refuge, the place where I felt in control. That day, more than ever, I wanted to push beyond my own limits. The training was intense, my body tired, but I persisted. I decided to do one more lap, the last lap I would make in that state of consciousness. It was then that everything happened. At first, I only felt a greater than normal tiredness, a strange weight on my chest. But before I could react, my vision darkened, and I felt as if I were being sucked into the water itself. Then nothing. No sound, no sensation, just absolute emptiness. I did not feel fear, I did not feel pain, just a strange calm. When I opened my eyes, I realized that I was no longer in the pool, but the most frightening thing was that I could see everything perfectly well. I saw my own body being hurriedly pulled out of the water. I saw my coach shouting for help. I saw the other swimmers standing still, looking in shock at what was happening. I was there, but at the same time, I was not. Then something even stranger happened. An invisible force began to pull me upward, as if I were floating away from my own body. In the blink of an eye, I found myself being sucked into a dark tunnel, an endless corridor that seemed to stretch beyond human comprehension. What scared me was not the darkness, but the feeling that it was alive. There was something there, something that whispered among the shadows. Voices echoed around me, some crying, others screaming in pure despair. I tried to understand what they were saying, but I couldn't. Everything seemed chaotic, and the more I tried to fight against it, the deeper I sank. Then, in the midst of that terror, a light appeared. It was not an ordinary light, like the sun or a lamp. It was something alive, pulsating, charged with an indescribable energy. In the center of that light, there was a presence. And I knew, without needing any explanation, that it was him. Jesus was there. But he was not as depicted in the images we usually see. He was not the man with gentle features and a calm gaze. There was something grand about him, something that filled me with both fear and peace at the same time. His presence was immense, overwhelming, and I knew that I couldn't even look at him directly. I fell to my knees without the strength to react, and then his voice echoed within me, not as a common sound, but as something that resonated within my soul. Lucas. He said my name, and in that instant, everything I had ever lived flashed before my eyes. I saw my childhood. I saw the people I met. I saw every moment of my life, as if it were a movie projected before me. But the most impressive thing was not the memories themselves, but the way I now saw them. I saw moments when I did good without realizing it, and I saw moments when I ignored those in need. I saw small choices that had enormous impacts, and I saw mistakes that seemed insignificant but carried eternal consequences. Then he showed me something even more disturbing. Jesus opened a book, but this book was not made of paper. It shone with its own light, as if it were alive. When I looked at the pages, I saw names written there, but to my horror, I realized that some names were slowly disappearing. They dissolved into the light, vanishing as if they had never been there. These are those who believed they had time. His words weighed on me like an undeniable truth. I saw familiar faces, people who once spoke about God, who attended churches, but who deep down had never truly surrendered their hearts. They thought that merely believing, that merely being a good person was enough. But there in the face of eternity, I realized how mistaken they were. Then Jesus raised his hand, and suddenly the scene changed. I was in another place. a place that made me tremble. I saw hell, but it was not like the caricatured images I had seen before. There was not just fire and monstrous creatures. The hell that I saw was a place of total absence of God. It was an absolute void, a black hole of despair, pain, and darkness. The feeling of anguish was unbearable, and the worst of all was seeing the people there. They screamed for a second chance, they cried out for mercy, but it was already too late. I wanted to look away, I wanted to leave, but Jesus made me look. He wanted me to see, to understand the truth. These are those who waited too long. It was then that I understood what was really happening. This was not just a warning. It was a mission. Jesus did not only want to show me what existed beyond life, he wanted me to come back. And then he showed me the future. I saw a world immersed in shadows. I saw people completely oblivious to what was about to happen, distracted by cell phones, social media, work, money. I saw full churches but with empty hearts. I saw religious leaders preaching comfortable messages but without truth. Everything was crumbling, yet no one seemed to notice. Then I heard another voice. It was an angel, powerful, whose presence radiated light. He raised his hand and said, "Time is running out." Then everything disappeared. I came to myself with a start. The noise of the machines, the desperate voices of the paramedics, the cold sensation of oxygen being forced into my lungs. Everything seemed distant, as if I was still between two worlds. My chest ached, my head pounded, but none of that mattered. I was alive. The doctors said that I was dead for 9 minutes and 36 seconds. They had no explanation for my recovery. They said it was a miracle that I returned without any cerebral sequelae, without any damage to my heart. But the true miracle was not that. The true miracle was what I saw and heard. The true miracle was what God allowed me to understand. In the first days after my recovery, my mind was overwhelmed by an avalanche of thoughts. I tried to process everything that had happened, but how do you explain the inexplicable? How do you put into words something that does not belong to this world? I wanted to shout the truth to everyone. I wanted to tell them that time was running out, that they needed to choose now before it was too late. But at the same time, a terrible fear dominated me. The fear did not come from God. The fear came from that which watched me in the darkness. On my first night at home, I woke up exactly at 3 in the morning. The room was absurdly cold, the kind of cold that cannot be explained by temperature alone. My eyes suddenly flew open, as if something had awakened me. And then, I saw it. In the corner of the room there was a shadow, but this shadow was not ordinary. It was darker than darkness itself, a dense presence loaded with something indescribable. My body froze, and then I heard a whisper that made my blood run cold. "Do you think they will believe?" The voice was hoarse, malicious. It did not need to say who it was, I already knew. I tried to move, but I couldn't. My breathing became heavy, my heart raced. It was as if something invisible was holding my body down on the bed. Then the voice echoed again. "They never listen. They always choose us." The laughter that followed was the most frightening sound I have ever heard. I wanted to scream, but my voice wouldn't come out. So with all the strength I had left, I did the only thing that could save me at that moment. I cried out the name of Jesus. The moment I did that, the shadow recoiled. The room was still cold, but the oppression began to fade. Gradually, I was able to move again. I sat up on the bed, my body trembling, my heart pounding. The war had begun. From that night on, spiritual attacks became constant. Sometimes they were just presences in the dark. Other times they were nightmares so vivid that I woke up sweating. But the worst of all was what they tried to plant in my mind. Maybe it was just a dream. Maybe you imagined it all. Maybe you're crazy. The goal was clear, to silence me. And for a time they almost succeeded. Talking about what I saw was not easy. I knew that many would call me crazy, fanatical, a liar. I knew that people prefer to live in the illusion that they have time, that none of this is real. But with each passing day, the weight of this truth grew inside me. I saw what happens to those who wait too long. I saw people crying out for a second chance when it was already too late. I saw familiar faces that we would have never imagined being there. I saw the demons laughing, because they knew they had deceived the world. And above all, I saw the truth that no one wants to hear. Believing in God is not enough. Churches are full of people who think they are saved just because they attend services or do good deeds, but their hearts are far away. They live as if they have all the time in the world without realizing that the door is closing. Jesus showed me that hell is not full of people who hated God. It is full of people who thought they were safe, people who said, "One day I'll make things right with God," but that day never came. I saw the future, and what lies ahead is not beautiful. The world is immersed in distractions. Social media, entertainment, money, politics. Everything is used to keep people blind to what really matters. Meanwhile, the darkness advances. Jesus showed me crowded churches, but without power. Pastors preaching gentle messages that do not confront sin, that only make people feel good. But the gospel is not about feeling good. The gospel is about repentance, transformation, and complete surrender. And that is something many do not want to hear. If you are listening to this message now, you need to understand. Time is running out. I did not expect to die at 13 years old. None of the souls I saw in hell expected their time to come so quickly. But death does not warn. It comes when we least expect it. If you still think that you can wait a little longer to make things right with God, know this: the demons want you to think that way. Every time you postpone your total surrender, your name begins to disappear from the book of life. I saw that book. I saw names shining like living flames, but I saw others that began to slowly vanish. People who were once close to God but drifted away. People who trusted in religion but never had a true relationship with Jesus. I also saw heaven, and no word can describe what I saw there. The peace, the love, the joy. It was something that surpassed anything I had ever experienced on earth. I saw faces I never imagined I would see there. I saw people who were rejected in this world, but who completely surrendered their lives to God. But I also saw empty places, places where religious leaders should be, places of people who trusted in their own good works, but never had a truly surrendered heart. And then Jesus looked at me and said, "Lucas, now you know the truth. You need to go back and warn them." I tried to beg to stay, but he only repeated, "Time is running out." In the next instant, I woke up in the pool. The battle is not over. Since that day, spiritual attacks have continued. The enemy wants to silence me, wants me to forget what I saw, but I cannot. Because this message is not about me. This message is about you. With each passing day, the world sinks further into darkness. People live as if they were immortal, as if they could choose God when it is convenient. But that is a lie. One day, the door will close. And on that day, many will realize too late that they lost the only chance they had. Jesus sent me back to warn you. The question is, will you listen before it is too late? If this message has touched you, do not ignore it. Share it. Talk about it. Make your decision today, because tomorrow it may be too late.